I started off my professional life in accounting. I
Yeah.
have a bachelor's and master's in accounting. I'm a CPA and realized that that was not where my passion lied. And I struggled for a very long time with self-doubt, like constant self-doubt. And it started back when I was a teenager from a relationship I had back then.
Hmm.
And it took me 40 something years to realize my value. And it came kind of in an aha moment where I did something that I'd never thought I could do. And through that journey, it really changed my whole world. And so I'm a big believer in that it's okay to change your mind and that we need to be constantly changing to move forward. And that failures are, when we think of a failure, it's not that yeah, okay, we messed something up, but failures don't define our worth. Just because we failed doesn't mean we're failures.
Right,
So
right.
I'm here today as a speaker and writer talking about my journey and really trying to inspire other people, specifically women, but other people in general to realize what they're capable of.
Mm.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stephenson, the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, where our ongoing goal is to inspire our listeners to live their best audacious lives ever. I'm totally thrilled to have you here with us, and I appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us on this journey. We will be exploring self-discovery and personal growth. And actually, when you think about it, I want to compare it to the majestic oak tree, because just the same way it stands tall and strong, rooted in self-respect, weathering storms of failure, and constantly growing to reach new heights, we too can build our confidence by controlling our thoughts, altering perspectives, and setting boundaries, allowing us to flourish and achieve personal growth. Our guest today is Simone Knego, a renowned author, speaker, and podcast host known for her work in helping individuals realize their true potential and embrace their unique journeys towards self-discovery and fulfillment. In today's episode, Simone shares invaluable insights on respecting oneself, embracing failures, and improving self-worth, demonstrating how these principles are essential for building confidence and achieving personal growth in our lives. So, we're set. Let's turn to our chat with Simone. Enjoy. Hey, Simone, thank you for joining us here on the Audacious Living Podcast. I appreciate you taking the time to be here. Thank you.
I'm so excited to be here today.
Yeah, it's great. I oftentimes talk about how much of a blessing it is to engage in these types of conversation that you think. I mean, if you think of the power of our words, for example, and something in this conversation that someone can hear, that they can institute that in their life and put themselves at a better place. It's just exhilarating to me, that idea. And so one person walks away with something, I'm floored big time. And so thank you for being a part of this. Here on this podcast, we really encourage individuals to live that best audacious life that we talk about. And it's an individual journey that we all take onto our own, but it is still our journey and one that we've got to own. You've got your fingers in a lot of different things, from speaking to podcasting to writing, and we'll get into all that in the book that you've got as well. But that very much is in line with what we talk about here on this podcast, particularly around living an extraordinary or ordinary life, if you will. And so maybe as a starting point, I can get you to sort of fill our audience in a little about yourself and what you do and what's brought you to this point.
Mm-hmm. So I am a mom of six. And I always like starting with that because that really is a big part of my identity.
Mm.
We have three biological children, three children that we adopted, and that is my best life. I am a speaker, podcast host, author, coach, and I've been married to my husband for 31 years. Maybe that should be my biggest accomplishment, is staying married for 31 years, but he's an amazing man, so that's why we're still married. I started off my professional life in accounting. I
Yeah.
have a bachelor's and master's in accounting. I'm a CPA and realized that that was not where my passion lied. And I struggled for a very long time with self-doubt, like constant self-doubt. And it started back when I was a teenager from a relationship I had back then.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me 40 something years to realize my value. And it came kind of in an aha moment where I did something that I'd never thought I could do. And through that journey, it really changed my whole world. And so I'm a big believer in that it's okay to change your mind and that we need to be constantly changing to move forward. And that failures are, when we think of a failure, it's not that yeah, okay, we messed something up, but failures don't define our worth. Just because we failed doesn't mean we're failures.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm here today as a speaker and writer talking about my journey and really trying to inspire other people, specifically women, but other people in general to realize what they're capable of.
Mm. So I'm curious. You talked about doing something you've never thought you could do. I gotta
Oh,
ask, what was
okay.
it? What was it? Got a cliffhanger there.
There we go. Yeah. I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in
Wow.
2015
Wow.
and I am not a climber. I live in Florida. I live at sea level. We've gone camping a couple of times. I climbed the stairs. And so this was definitely outside of my comfort zone. But my husband's, one of my husband's best friends did it the year before.
Okay.
And he called my husband, and my husband, I tell the story one, two, three, no, thank you, call Simone. He tells the story, well, I don't want to sleep in a tent and that kind of stuff. So, he has his excuses for it. He was not going to do it no matter what.
Right.
And they called me and I said yes. I was really at a moment in my life where I just felt really like I needed to get out of my comfort zone. I needed to
Right.
do something different. And that's what I did. And met amazing people, had a life-changing experience, and came back truly a different person, ready to really work on myself, which I had ignored for years,
Okay.
and kind of really focus on what I needed to do to move myself forward. My whole life before had been focusing on my children, my
Hmm.
husband,
Hmm.
how can I help other people?
Yep.
But what I realized is that we have to take care of ourselves as well.
Yes.
And a lot of
Yes.
times we have to take care of ourselves first so that we can do a better job taking care of other people.
It's true. And it's so funny because, and particularly as a mother, mothers are taught their children are first, so look after them. And, there's a sense of obligation and responsibility and, even some judgments. Well, you're not a good mother if you do other, like, there's all
Hmm.
these sorts of things that are floating around out there. And it's kind of sounds like you sort of found yourself in that a little bit.
Yeah. And I think it was a really good thing for my kids to see as well. I mean, I have three daughters, three sons, and
Sure.
not just for my daughters, but for my sons to see, like, if they get married in the future, their wives should be able to do whatever they want to do, right? There shouldn't be
Mm.
like, oh, you can't do that, or what will other people think? My husband was always very supportive. I just needed to realize for myself that I could do things. And so putting myself out there, and I really do think it changed our whole family dynamics. And that looking at my daughters now, they don't look at things and say, I can't do that. If
Hmm.
they don't want to, they say, I don't want to do that. But, so many times we say, I can't, I can't. And ask yourself if you want to. And if you do, yes, you can.
Right. So how did I don't want to leave Kilimanjaro here for a second because that's a big deal first and foremost, Simone. I mean, congratulations.
Thank you.
Um, but how did climbing, and even the experience of climbing sort of adjust your perspective? And you talked about self-doubt earlier. How did it impact your perception on self-doubt and even confidence?
Yeah. So we all have that voice inside our head that tries to hold us back, that tells
Yes.
us, oh, you're not capable of this, or why do you even think you should show up at that? You don't fit in, all these different things. And that was really the voice that I had going up the mountain. And oh my gosh, why are you here? You're 42 years old. You have
Mm,
six kids at home. This is ridiculous. And you're not in shape enough. You're not a climber. Like all those thoughts constantly through my head. But what I realized is that by putting one foot in front of the other, by keeping I kept going even through those voices. That's what builds confidence. That's what breaks down the self-doubt. So it's not that the voice is going to go away. You learn to
mm,
quiet it because you learn that when you keep going, that you're proving to yourself that you can do these things. And so it's not necessarily about the destination. It's really about the journey. It's about starting and not stopping. And I mean, we stop at certain things, but
sure.
really, really, really moving forward. And that's what I realized is that so many of the things I've done in my life, I didn't do because I was afraid of failing. And so what's the worst thing that happened? You try something and it doesn't work out. Oh well, you try something else. But it took climbing a mountain for me to kind of have that aha moment. And I think that you don't need to go out and climb a mountain, but do
Sure.
something that you never thought you could, right? Try something different so that you see that you can do these things. And if it
Mhm.
doesn't work out exactly how you thought it would, try something else.
Right, right, right. How long was the climb?
So 5 days up, 2 days down.
Oh, wow.
And then we were there a couple days ahead of time to get acclimated and a couple days afterwards, because if you got on a plane after that, that would be awful.
Mm,
I was
understood.
never more tired in my life. But it was
Understood.
fantastic. And the people that I went with, so we were raising money for the Live Strong Foundation. There were cancer survivors. There were people, hiking in honor of someone with cancer or someone that had
Yep.
passed. It was it was really special.
So the 5 day in that 5 days up, uh, can you count? Or are you able to identify the number of times you felt like quitting?
I don't want to say that I ever felt like quitting. I will
Hmm.
say the number of times that I had horrible things through my head, I probably couldn't count because there were so many, right? There's
Mm,
like the constant, because a lot of the to climb, you're quiet because you're saving your energy, right? I mean, as soon as you start talking, no, you get tired, so it's all about saving your pennies. That's what our leader would say: save your pennies, take small steps. Don't go out there and be belting out a song because you can't get it back. So I had a lot of quiet time and a lot of time to
gotcha.
reflect. And so, but it was kind of that inner conflict of these comments coming up and me kind of trying to smush them back down again, saying, I'm still
Mm.
here. I'm still moving forward.
Yeah, yeah. I think the idea of moving forward, when you sort of talk about that, when we talk about the inner critic, the idea of just moving forward, keep being productive, keep pushing ahead. Again, doesn't, as you said, doesn't make the voice go away and it's gone. It just silences a little bit,
Mhm.
enables you to really focus on the task at hand.
Yeah, completely. And I don't think there's anybody out there that will tell you that they don't have the inner critic. We can talk
Mm,
about celebrities. We can talk about athletes. I mean, that's
sure,
why you see, I mean, you watched in the Olympics, you see these amazing athletes who are still using positive affirmations to get themselves going. They have that stuff swirling in their head too. Like we are not alone in this, right? You're not, whoever's listening, you are not alone in this. Like when
yeah,
you have these struggles, everybody goes through this. And so I think a lot of times we put ourselves in a corner saying we're the only ones that go through this, and that's completely not true. But that was fun for me when, I really pick up on this stuff now because I'm so focused on it, watching these athletes in the Olympics, watching football players,
sure,
when they have their mics on, they're walking across the field and they're like building themselves up so
yep.
that they can keep going. Such an important part in our lives. We don't do it enough. I'm a huge proponent of positive affirmations. I do them every day. And
Yep.
I do think those as well have been life changing for me.
It's funny. As I said before, I mean, I'm a big fan of podcasting. I've been doing it for a while. In fact, my very first podcast was in 2008,
Mm.
long before they were popular. Now, like a business card, everyone's got one kind of a thing. Whereas back then, it was relatively new. And I think, um, I believe this since then, this is my sixth different podcast that I've done,
Wow.
different topics, different kinds of things. And I remember in 2020, that's when this one started. Was at the end of 2020, and I knew I wanted a podcast, and I had this strong calling, right? And I was like, yeah, I'll podcast again. And the other voice was like, podcast? Come on. You know how many podcasts are already out there? Like, what are you in a podcast for? Like, and now by this point, it had been a few years since like I did last podcast, and I was like, do you even know how to do it anymore?
Mm.
Like, really? What are you doing? Like, and who's going to listen to you? There's so many out there already. You're just going to clutter the airwaves and be more noise. Like, find something else to do, right? And this is the guy that's been doing this since
Yeah.
2008, right? And I'm still having this like these all these things of self doubt. And I remember just kind of going through that process, not totally recognizing I was doing it. So that self sabotage that we do to ourselves, I wasn't totally recognizing I was doing it, but it was like it was happening, and I'm going, yeah, maybe I'll find something else to do. Maybe this isn't for me. And I just remember going through that realization process when I was asking myself, well, why podcast? I was like, well, why not? Like, it doesn't matter how many other podcasts are out there. There's none of them that sound like Audley Stephenson. So I've got
Yep.
my own unique voice. I've got my own unique perspective. I've got me. So, to your point about that inner critic, man, we're all susceptible to it. No one escapes it. It's coming for every single one of us.
Yes. Yeah. But learning to kind of override it, learning to kind of squash it so that you can move forward. Because obviously, if that's all you hear all day long, then you're not going to move forward, right? You have to be able to say to it, okay, this is ridiculous. I know how to podcast. I've done this before and I have an amazing voice and I'm going to be out there and people are going to listen. I mean, that's how we have to approach life. And otherwise, you don't move forward.
Yeah, no, very, very true, very, very true. You talked earlier about failure, and I think that's an important topic for many of us because failure is something that we all experience. Like,
Hmm.
point me someone that's never failed, and I'll tell you they never lived their life. Because if you're not trying things, you're not experimenting, you're not putting yourself in a position to fail, then you're just playing it safe. And so, and I oftentimes say, your failure, a couple of things will happen. You'll try something and you'll succeed, which is great because that's the purpose of trying. Or you try something, you don't succeed, but you walk away with a lesson how to do it better the next time around. So,
Right.
failings had all kinds of benefits, I would say.
Oh, I would say so too. And it's how you react to a failure, right? I mean, it's okay in the moment to you have to have your moment, right? You have to say, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. This is ridiculous." And then you have to take a step back and say, "What did I learn from this?" Because just because you failed at something doesn't mean you're a failure. And your failure, failure does not equal your self-worth.
Right,
So I think a lot of people kind of attach a failure to their own personality, and that's really hard to move forward. I think you have to really separate it out and say, yeah, I failed at this. Okay, what did I learn? How can I use this next time? Instead of saying, oh, that's the end of the world. I can't ever do anything again.
right. And the topic of failure, I think, is a really, really important one because if you don't perceive it um, in a productive fashion, you'll end up doing more harm to yourself, right? You'll start questioning your self-worth and, am I good enough? And can I do these things? And maybe even change the way you even see yourself, right? And so, I think it's your perception, how we perceive failure, is so important because nine times out of 10, the person who we are is absolutely enough to do what we need to get done. We just have to believe it.
Yeah, it's so true. There is do you know the brand Spanx?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so Sarah Blakely. So her dad did something with her. I think it was every night at dinner where his question was, what did you fail at today?
Hmm.
And I thought that is such a great question to like normalize it, right? To be like, okay, what did you fail at? What did you learn from it? What are you going to do
Yeah,
differently? Instead of saying, I think we reward just everything these days. And so when people do fail, they think it's the end.
mm,
And I think that's a big part of it. I don't know what it's like now because my youngest kid is 16, but in sports when the kids were little, everybody got a participation trophy, so
sure.
everybody thought they were the best on the team. And that's not real life, right? I mean,
Mm,
I get it. You want to build their self-esteem in some way, but then if you don't allow your kids to experience failures, the first time it happens, it is like hard to recover from because they're not used to it. And I think asking your kids, what'd you fail at today? I had my daughter had a teacher who she would celebrate mistakes in class. So the kids would
okay.
feel comfortable being able to stand up and do a problem on the board. And if
Yeah.
they messed up, the kids were like, great, okay, great, clap, clap, clap. Let's try again. Who wants to try next? And
Right.
so you didn't feel like, oh my gosh, I failed. I'm going to sulk back to my seat and put my head down because I'm so embarrassed. It was
Mhm.
never like that. And I think normalizing it, I think would really help.
Yeah. I like that. Celebrate our failures.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
normalizing, the underscore the normalizing is a big one. And if individuals are able to accept failure as part of the process, and again, I talked earlier about their perception of failure then changes. and you don't go, oh man, I messed up and curl up in a ball. You say, okay, yeah, I messed up, but what did I take from it?
Hmm.
Right? And how can I do it better? And then the part about that always charges me, Simone, is taking those lessons and then passing them on to other people. Like that to me just really
Hmm.
excited because I fail, I messed up, but guess what? I'm gonna help you that you don't because here's how you can do it better. And that's just exciting.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing that a lot of people don't do because when they fail at something, they do associate it with them being a failure, and therefore they don't want to share about it because there's, whether it's shame or embarrassment or whatever
Yep.
it is, they don't want to share it. But I'm here to tell you, share it because that's how you help other people. That's how you grow by being able to talk about the hard stuff.
Very, very, very true. Very true. I mentioned off the top about all the things that you do, and one of them is an author, and you've got a book out, and you're working on another one. But let's talk about what the extraordinary, unordinary you is all about.
Thanks. So I wrote this book in 2020. Best timing ever, right? To publish a book. Yay. But who knew what was going to happen at that time? So the book is all about realizing what you're capable of and recognizing that the little things you do every day matter. So I mentioned my kids. I talk about, there's some stories about the kids. There's the adoption stories of my youngest three.
Hmm.
There's me climbing Kilimanjaro. And it really all goes back to lessons on really for the reader understanding that it's through our struggles that we build our strength and
Yes.
having it was fun to write, and it was actually really fun to write the end of it because it was during COVID and the kids had all come home. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, we're gonna have six kids back at the house. We haven't, I mean, how is this gonna go?
They're
And
back.
I would tell you, it really is, I mean, obviously a horrible time, right? But it for
Mm,
us, it was a blessing because they got to reconnect. I mean, there's 13 years difference between my oldest and my youngest. And
mm,
so when he left the house, she was just like this annoying, snot-nosed little kid.
yeah.
And when he came back, he's like, oh my gosh, she's pretty cool.
Right.
So they
Right.
built all of them built different relationships by being home for that period of time. And my favorite place to write was sitting on the couch listening to all the crap they were talking about because I was like, it would remind me of some of the really great stories that were really impactful. And I was like, ah, I wouldn't have even thought about this story if they weren't here like complaining about something. So it was really fun to write. And it's out there in the world and I'm proud of it because it wasn't something I ever thought I would do. I mean,
Mm,
hello, I'm a CPA, right? But what I realized is that what I'm good at and what I love is storytelling. So
sure.
whether it's podcasting, speaking, that's what I feel like my passion is.
So, what would you say the starting point for someone who's trying to figure out, what they bring to the world and who they are and what their place is? I mean, that question of, question your own self worth. Am I enough? Is a real one for a lot of people,
Hmm.
and again for a lot of people, even to a difficult question to answer and even to overcome. So, what would you? Someone's trying to figure it out. Where do they start?
So a big question I like to ask is, what do you want? I can tell you a lot of people can't answer that question. They don't know what they want because they have done everything for everyone else for so long, or they have done what they thought they were supposed to do, right?
Hmm.
You think that you have this linear path in life and you're going from point A to point B and just going with your head down. And so when you ask people what they want, they're like, "Ooh, I have no idea. Nobody's really asked me that before." And then you break down the layers and say, okay, if you could do anything, let's talk not about financials and that kind of stuff. Like think back to your younger self, right? The kid who wanted to be the astronaut or the ballerina. Think back to that where you didn't have restrictions and you could just say, I want to do this.
Hmm.
What would it be? And I think that's a really great starting point because it really uncovers the things that they people haven't thought about in a long time, right? We're
Right.
doing our
Right.
jobs. We got to show up. We got to make money. We got to support the family. But what do you actually want? Oh, okay. Let me start thinking about that a little bit. And for some people, it is much more difficult to say. Some people have an answer right away. This is what I would do. This is what I would do. I would
Yeah.
travel the world and blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, what could you do in your life that you could travel the world and still make money, right? I mean, you see people out there, you can make a job out of anything these days, right? I mean,
Yes.
you watch these influencers who literally, there's one that I've seen, and I don't remember their names, Nate and maybe it's Nate and Kate. I don't remember, but,
Okay.
or Kat, maybe her name's Kat. They travel all over the place, and that's what they do for their job. They literally video all this stuff. They get really discounted flights, they get free amenities places, and it's incredible that that's what you can do. So
Yes.
I think that a lot of times we limit ourselves because we think that if we like something that we'll never be able to do it, right? Because there's not a job for that. There's a job for everything. And the other thing is, it doesn't have to be your main job, right?
No,
You
no.
can do volunteer work. You can play on a tennis team. You can add something else in your life that really brings out your passion without changing everything.
Right. It just again, it's very clear that in order for us to make that forward movement, we've got to make an adjustment to ourselves and how we see where we fit and all. So there's some real hard work that has to be done by us, and
Mhm.
that's very very clear. Um, I see where you have something called a real method, real
Mhm.
REAL.
Mhm.
I kind of get the sense this sort of feeds into what we just talked about.
Yeah, it's a big part of it. So the real method is it starts with respect. So respect your reflection, embrace your failures, ask yourself what you want, love the woman in the mirror, or love the person in the mirror. So, I mean, obviously I love talking to women, but I'm adjusting it also because it works the same for men, right? We have to love the
Mm,
person that we see in the mirror. So respecting your reflection is really about, it's not the reflection in the mirror, it's part of it, but it's really everything that you've done throughout your whole life, like reflecting back on your life and thinking of those moments where, oof, I didn't like what happened there.
right.
Understanding that everything you've gone through has brought you to this moment in time. And
Mm,
so respecting all the parts, right? I mean, there were times that I really struggled with that. And we talk to our kids. I mean, trust me, I talk to my kids about everything. But when I was growing up, I learned that I needed to respect my elders, my peers, right? My teachers. I don't ever remember. And if they told me this, it wasn't, on a regular basis, the most important person to respect is yourself,
so,
right? You have to respect yourself. And I think that's a big fail that we have out there, that understanding how important self-respect is, because that allows us to put up boundaries. It doesn't make us like mean people. It makes us understand, or helps us to understand our worth. So
yes.
really understanding that it's okay to say no and not feel guilty, right? You don't have to show up at every single kids event. If you
Yep.
can't be there, you can't be there. That doesn't make you a bad parent, right?
Right. Right.
And or a colleague at work who wants you to finish their work, the answer is no. Like, that's not your job. But being able to understand that we can put up these boundaries. So,
Yeah. No. And the piece around boundaries, I think, is really important because that gives us a framework in which we can operate within. And saying no isn't a bad thing, particularly if it's for our own personal well-being and mental health, right? So I think that's a good point for people to manage, to keep in mind rather. You also have another book you talk about. It sounds like a bit on the topic of self-love, how to love the woman in the mirror.
so the book, I'm almost done writing it. It's
Okay,
actually going to really be focused on building unshakable confidence. I don't have the actual title yet. I'm the person who writes the book, and then I'm like, oh, this
sure.
is the exact title. So it's stories, it's my stories, it's other people's stories. It's a lot of frameworks as well, like really specific things that people can do to implement the real
Yeah,
method in their lives.
yeah.
And hopefully it will be out sometime mid to late next year. So I'm really excited about this one. I have spent a lot of time on this one. I didn't have, when it was COVID, I didn't have anything else to do. So I could just sit there and
Sure.
write all the time. And now my calendar is crazy. So it's like I schedule everything. So I have an hour in my calendar to write and, get that done. So it is definitely this one is a labor of love. And,
Yeah,
I learned a lot from my first one, especially when you're writing any kind of self-help book. People
of
really
course.
want the really specific frameworks and tools to use.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
stories are great, but they want to know, how did you get exactly where
yeah.
you are? What
What
did
can
you
I
do?
do? Yeah, that's right. What
So,
do I
yeah,
need to
what can
do?
I do? Yeah. So that's what this one is. And I have one framework in there called Control Alt Delete, which I really love. Really goes back to the self-respect, where there's a lot of research out there about the amount of thoughts we have every day. But
Sure.
Queen's University has a study out there that shows that we have 6,200 thoughts a day. There's other ones that show we have 70,000 thoughts a day, 80,000. This one is a very medical based study where they did MRIs and all this kind of stuff. And they show 6,200 thoughts a day, and 80% of them are negative, 95% of them are repetitive. And
Mm.
which is so interesting, right? So if you think that you are starting your day and all these negative, that you look in the mirror and what do you see? Oh my gosh, like I didn't see that great hair before. Oh my gosh, look at that wrinkle.
Yep,
So all
yep.
these negative things that are creeping in our heads. So it's really about controlling our thoughts, altering our perspective, and deleting, right?
I
Deleting
love
those
it.
things and just saying, scrunching them up, throwing them in the trash can. And when we alter our perspective, it goes from I can, I can't to I can, or I can't to I will. And what if I fail to what if I succeed, right? And so that's my favorite framework because I feel like it is really relatable. And even for the young kids who their idea of Control Alt Delete is you push the power button, you turn it back on again, that works pretty well as well. So you got
I
to
love it.
reset. You got to reset.
I love it. Yes, that was the word I was going to say. Reset. No, I love it. That's an
Mhm.
awesome one. That's an awesome one. Simone, this has been great. I love the work that you're doing. I love the commitment to really helping individuals get to that better place, if you will. And it really starts from within, recognizing that our self worth levels are at the right place, and we absolutely know that we are enough, and really building and those things build our confidence. I think you've done a phenomenal job in helping people understand that. For our listeners that wanted to connect with you directly or learn more about your work, where can we send them?
Best place is my website, SimoneKnego.com. I imagine you'll put it in show notes. So
Will do.
I'm the only Simone Knego out there, at least until someone names their kid after me. Ha. But that's the best place. I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook. You can join my
Sure.
newsletter on my website. I send out a weekly um, blog and podcast update. I have a podcast with my daughter called
Oh, wow.
Her Unshakable Confidence. So my 21-year-old daughter,
I
we do
love
that
it.
podcast together, and it's really a lot of fun because having two different perspectives, right? I'm 52, she's 21, and especially when we interview guests, she'll hear things differently when they respond, and it's really been a great learning experience.
I love it. That's an amazing experience for sure for both of you. Simone, thank you for this. This has been great. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you for sharing the man that you have, and congratulations on the great work.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Back we are here on the podcast. Simone beautifully articulated the journey to live an audacious life starts from within. By respecting ourselves, learning from our failures, and enhancing our self-worth, we can transform our mindset, overcome challenges, and unlock our full potential to create a life filled with purpose and fulfillment. To learn more about Simone and her work, her transformative work, certainly visit her website at SimoneKnego.com, where you'll find inspiring content. I encourage you to subscribe to her newsletter and podcast and connect with her on her social media platforms as well to continue your personal growth story. Stay tuned for Simone's upcoming book that she mentioned. It's on focusing on building unshakable confidence. It's going to be a valuable resource packed with frameworks and tools to help you transform your mindset and achieve personal growth like never before. Thank you for tuning in to the Audacious Living Podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode and found value in Simone's insights, please consider liking, following, subscribing, and sharing this podcast to help us reach even more listeners and continue to spread positivity and empowerment. Remember, the journey to living audaciously starts with you. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast. hosted by Audley Stephenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.